Hi everyone! Welcome to lesson 3 of the 5-part series on the best ADHD diet to help your child calm down and focus so you can have more quality time with your child instead of screaming and yelling battles. My name is Anatai. I'm a registered dietitian and also a board-certified specialist in pediatric nutrition with a focus in functional medicine. In lesson 1, we talk about how the ADHD brain is different. It's on average about 3 years behind and 10% smaller than the neurotypical brain, and it does not like carbohydrates. In lesson 2, we talk about the other ADHD brain that is in our gut, and there's an imbalance caused by the wrong diet and certain medications. And today we'll continue to talk about common hidden food allergies in kids with ADHD. And this is one of my favorite topics. This is because it's my specialty. So let's get started. So children with ADHD are more likely to have allergy disorders, things like food allergy, asthma, and atopic dermatitis or eczema. If your child have eczema, asthma, or frequent ear infection, there's a very likely chance that your child's ADHD are related to food sensitivity. So what comes to mind when you hear the words food allergies? So usually the picture that comes to people's mind when they hear food allergy is, if you've watched the movie Hitch, in that movie, Will Smith, he ate something accidentally that has shrimp, which he's severely allergic to, and his whole face and ears literally swelled up. That's the kind of allergic reaction that most people think of when they think of allergic food reaction. So people mostly think of like physical manifestation, but a lot of food allergies and intolerances actually manifest itself in a more subtle behavioral ways. So can you think of any incidents in the past where your child suddenly kind of act not like himself or herself after eating certain food? Like in my situation, like my daughter, one time I picked her up from school, she got into the car and she just started talking nonstop, which is not her usual self. And then that happened for several days, and then I finally figured out she had pepperoni at the after-school program. So, and it's something that we don't usually eat at home, but that was something that I figured that make her kind of change after she eats. So we cut out all that processed food or processed meat from our diet. So example will be like your child will act kind of funny after eating certain food, or they throw a raging tantrum asking for like crackers or some kind of snacks, and after eating that food, he or she would calm down. So I hear things like that all the time from parents, and usually kids with ADHD tends to have more hidden food allergy versus the allergic reaction that we described earlier. So the reason why I use the word hidden is because these kind of allergies or intolerances are usually not identified right away. Most of the time we don't even know that it exists, because when we think of food allergy, we think of, well, you eat some food and then you either have stomach pain right away, or your face swelled up, or you have hard time breathing. But a lot of these allergic reaction, it doesn't happen that way. A lot of times the reaction or the symptoms or the change doesn't even show up 2-3 hours later, sometimes maybe 2-3 days later. So that's the reason why it is so difficult to identify. And again, these are very common reactions in kids with ADHD and even kids with autism. And food intolerance and food allergies also share a lot of the similar signs and symptoms. That's the reason why people always get confused. So some of the common symptoms or signs are diarrhea, vomiting, runny nose, nasal congestion, hives, rash. And I mentioned earlier, asthma is not really related to that, but is an association. So before we go further, I want to kind of talk a little bit more about the difference between food allergies and food intolerance, because a lot of parents, I've seen some parents try to get the child tested for food allergies, and then when the test comes back all negative, they're disappointed because they're like, I swear to God, he or she is allergic to this. So there's a reason why some of the food reaction doesn't show up on the food allergy or blood test. So there's the true food allergy that we talked about earlier. Why am I breaking out in rash? So there are true food allergies that happens right after you eat a certain kind of food, and that's usually the reason why we call that the true food allergy, because it involves the IgE, immunoglobulin E, and this is the one that will show up on your skin test and your blood test. And then the other one, so this is the one where the reactions show up right after you eat certain type of food. Okay, hope nothing's wrong. And the fatal peanut allergy falls into this category. And the other thing is, with this test, there's a lot of false positive and false negative. So sometimes parents will get the results back like, oh my God, my child's allergic to all this food. And then when you actually ask them, so when last time they have this food, did they actually have a reaction? They're like, no. So it's a false negative, false positive. And then the other type of reaction that I'm focusing on today is the hidden one. So the hidden food allergies involve the IgA and usually the IgG, or maybe it's just a reaction to the body not able to digest the food properly. So those will not show up on the blood test. The blood test only tests for IgE. So you'll need a separate blood test to check for the IgA and the IgG. So usually the IgA is associated with autoimmune disorder, and the IgG is usually associated with any kind of gut originated type of reaction, because the gut, 75% of your immunity actually happens in the gut. So that's the allergy thing. And then most kids with allergies, usually they have it when they're really young. Like I see a lot of milk allergies in the first year of life, and a lot of times pediatrician will kind of brush it off like it might be just infant reflux or this and that, and then they kind of ignore it for years, and then finally somehow they get a referral to see me, and I was like, your child's allergic to milk, you need to get them off milk. Okay, so the other difference is between the true food allergy and the food intolerance is, if your child have an IgE reaction to the food, that food needs to be completely eliminated. That's the only way to outgrow that food. Certain food can be outgrown by like 4 or 5 years old if you change the diet right away. Some stays forever, especially with peanut allergy. Is very, very, very rare that you can outgrow peanut allergy or any kind of tree nut allergy. With food intolerances, on the other hand, like I said, the reaction is a lot slower and is an intolerance. So that means that you can usually tolerate a small amount of that food, but then over time, if you keep eating more and more, then you have more reaction to that. Like in my case, I'm sensitive to gluten, and it actually took me like 3 years to figure that one out. But because I don't have severe reaction to that, occasionally I still have bread or things that have gluten in it, but then days later I'll have the reaction and then I'll regret it. So some of the symptoms of food intolerance will include things like brain fog, absent-minded, anxiety, agitation, and fatigue. So these are intolerance. But we're going to talk about something more interesting later on, about specifically for kids with autism and ADHD. So I just want to touch a little bit into some of the causes of food intolerance or some of the food allergy. So part of the reason, or a possible cause of that, is poor digestion or lack of enzymes, kind of like the lactose intolerance. Lactose intolerance is not a food allergy. It's just that your body's not making enough enzymes to break down the milk sugar lactose in milk. So sometimes if our intestine is not functioning properly, the food is not being broken down properly. So what happens is when the food is not broken down properly, it just sits in your intestine and get rotten, eaten up by the wrong bacteria, and then over time you'll end up with a gut bacteria imbalance like what we talked about yesterday. And with the gut imbalance, over time you develop something called leaky gut. So your gut ended up with little tiny holes in there. Remember, your intestine is your first defense for the body when like foreign stuff goes in your body, and like your intestine is supposed to block everything. But when there are little tiny holes in the intestine, all those some of the partially digested food can gets through those tiny little holes into the bloodstream, and that's where it triggers the allergic response, like trigger the body to make antibodies to attack those foods, and that's how you see some of the food reaction and even inflammation, and those are some of the causes of the ADHD symptoms. So let's see what else if I missed anything. So the other thing is, so digestion is one. The other thing is your child who has ADHD or even autism may be sensitive to food additives. So with our food supply nowadays, because it's so processed, there's so much stuff added to our food, there's a very likely chance that your child is sensitive to the artificial things as added to the food. Things like preservative, food coloring, monosodium glutarate, which is MSG, sodium benzoate, and a lot, maybe a couple more, hundreds and thousands more. And this is actually the basis of the Feingold diet introduced by Dr. Benjamin Feingold in 1975. He's actually he's a pediatric allergist, and he was treating kids with allergy symptoms. And when he put these kids on these elimination diet where they take out all the food additives, colorings, preservative, he noticed that a lot of these kids, their hyperactivity actually gets better. So that's how the Feingold diet comes in. And like I said, it was introduced in 1975. And then again, elimination diet is not like something brand new. Like the medical society has been using elimination diet to treat a lot of mental health disorders since like the 1920s. So, but anyway, that's one of the original ADHD diet. But what I'm trying to show you here with today's lesson is food allergy can be one of the cause, and that's the reason why even though the Feingold diet is one of the original ADHD diet, it doesn't work because it doesn't correct the underlying causes caused by food allergies from the food protein. So here, we're going to dig into the meat of this lesson. So the most common food sensitivity in children with ADHD and autism are actually sensitivity to casein, which is a protein in milk, and gluten, which is a type of protein in wheat. So if you've been following anything in the autism community, you'll hear a lot about the gluten-free and casein-free diet, and it works really wonderfully in a lot of children with autism. And here's the reason why. So remember I was talking about how digestion, when you eat the food needs to be broken down properly. So normally the food, or actually we all assume that whatever we eat get broken down 100% to the finest thing, and the body is able to use every single bit of it. But what we find is a lot of kids with autism and ADHD do tend to have more problem with digestion. So a lot of the protein are not being broken down properly, especially things like casein and gluten. And the reason why more specifically, these two proteins is because when casein is not broken down properly, it remains as a peptide called casomorphin. And gluten, if it's not broken down properly, it remains as a peptide called gliodorphin. So you hear the last part, morphine and endorphin, it kind of sounds like morphine, right? So basically, the gluten and the casein in the food becomes more like a morphine, which is a drug that can cause reaction in the brain. Basically, the casomorphine and the gliadorphin attach to the same receptor where morphine hits. So a lot of times we see kids with ADHD and autism will act really in an addictive way around certain foods, especially around milk product and wheat product like bread, pasta, noodles, and then milk, cheese, yogurt, and things like that. And usually with these kind of undigested protein, you see more aggressive type of behavior like aggression, irritability, moodiness, anxiety, depression, brain fog. Well, we call brain fog in adult, but it's lack of focus in children, and then also fatigue. So besides these undesirable mental effects with how it affects the brain, other physical telltale signs will be things like allergic shiners, like if your child have like dark circles under the eyes, like if you see that, I have those too. Colic, runny nose, ear infections, eczema, belly pain, bad breath, and insomnia. So if your child have problems sleeping at night, it might be the casomorphin or gliadorphins that is affecting their rhythm. So the only way to get rid of this issue is to eliminate the offending proteins. So basically the casein and the gluten. So which means that dairy product, milk product, and wheat product will be out. So in lesson 5, I think 2 days from now, we'll talk more about the whole diet, because lesson 1 to 4, we're talking about the reasons behind this specific ADHD diet. So on lesson 5, we're going to talk about the whole ADHD diet, what to eliminate and what to include. So basically, the child have a high level of the casomorphin, will have strong cravings for milk product. Same for the milk. So you see that when I talk about that, like kids just basically have addictive behavior around those foods. And I hear parents tell me a lot of times, like the kids will be so irritable, so cranky, and they'll throw a raging tantrum asking for cookies, crackers, or milk. And then once they have those items, they'll calm down into their sweet little angel self. So this lesson today is basically one of the reasons why ADHD medications or supplements or a clean diet or a vegan diet does not work for every single child, because all of these different treatment doesn't correct the underlying food allergies. And I hear a lot of times parents say, oh yeah, I tried this diet, tried this supplement, it kind of helps, but my child still have this and that. And I was like, did you look at the diet and see what he's reacting to? So once you figure that out, you should be able to pinpoint what food to remove. But another point I want to make is that the blood test is not going to be useful in this case. Like I mentioned earlier, most of this reaction is not going to show up. The gold standards of any food allergy testing is the oral challenge. And again, with the hidden food allergies, because a lot of times it doesn't show up hours to days later, the only way you can do it is to do an elimination diet where you eliminate all the potential food allergies until all the symptoms disappear, or most of the symptoms get better or disappear. Then you introduce one food back at a time, and that will be your gold standard test for food allergies. So that's the common hidden food allergies in ADHD. So basically is gluten and casein sensitivity, which is due mostly to poor digestion or poorly digested food. So in the next lesson, we're going to talk about common nutrient deficiency in children with ADHD. That will be a lesson tomorrow. So I hope you find this information helpful. Let me know what you think and comment below. And remember, ADHD doesn't doom your child to a life of underachievement. you know your child is bright and full of potential and deserves the best. In fact, many of the world's greatest discoveries and inventions were made by people with ADHD. And I helped my crazy wild child who couldn't read or write when she was little with the 4 steps that I laid out in my book, Eat to Focus. She's now a merit scholarship student studying pre-med at Loyola Chicago. So stay strong and keep believing in your child. Also, check out the book Eat to Focus, which is on Amazon.com right now, to learn about the simple 4 steps that you can get your child from 0 to 100% focus and calm. This information might change your child's future too. And thank you for watching today, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Okay, bye.